has happened.
I have to ask you, you're here in Australia. We have our own issues to deal with, particularly when it relates to property. And this was a huge issue in the US as well. What do you make of what's happening here?
In the U.S., I think the difference may be that when we compare, look at price to rents or price, that kind of indicator, things don't look that out of sync with historical norms. Here, maybe it's, as I usually say, Australia's off the chart in this. And obviously, it's an area that we've learned from our history that housing and housing finance are been very important for thinking about financial stability. You have to make sure that the risks that are happening in that sector don't spill over into a more broader damage to the banking and sector and the rest of the economy. That's the lesson that we definitely learned with our housing bubble and crash.
It's interesting that the economies that really suffered in the financial crisis seem to have now sort of more normalised, whereas the countries like Australia, who didn't overly suffer during that time, Canada, New Zealand, are now seeing our house prices run away. Do we have to learn the lesson? Do we have to have a crunch, or can we just keep sailing on, do you think?
Places like Australia have weathered the storm, I think, does create maybe some complacency and maybe feeling that, well, we're never going to have these kind of problems. But that's that's I think a reality that we ran into in the U.S., where everyone said, well, there's never been a housing crash in the U.S. since the Great Depression. And I mean, hubris is a common issue when it comes to thinking about these issues.
John?
Yes, of course, we're never going to have a property crash in Australia because it's never happened and it's never going to happen, so we'll be hunky-dory. Just ask the biggest economy in the world, United States. Just ask Ireland, Spain, and a few other places around the world. Nobody saw it coming. Hey, but there's good news. Next story.
First home buyers in New South Wales and Victoria will be given a leg up by the government from this weekend. They won't have to pay stamp duty on either new or existing homes, up to $650,000 in Sydney and up to $600,000 in Melbourne. Property analysts say the easing of auction clearance rates this month shows first home buyers are staying out of the market still, waiting for the change to take effect. Some of the cost will be borne by foreign investors who will have their surcharge on stamp duty doubled. Here's Emily Stewart.
Beautiful.
Prue Casby has been apartment hunting in Melbourne's inner north for about 2 months.
It's been pretty difficult to find something that is affordable and within our price range. I mean, it's obviously highly competitive and, properties, even the prices that they quote, they go much higher than that.
But she's hopeful it will be more affordable come July, when she'll make a saving of around $30,000 when she no longer has to pay stamp duty.
That's a lot. That's a large portion of our deposit, I guess, and particularly in the price range that we're looking at, that is a really significant amount of money to us. So it is a huge saving, and if we could save on that, then it would really help us to get into the market.
If you saw my previous video, you'll realize that, see how the government is actually examining or exempting first home buyers from paying the stamp duty. Now, think about the whole stamp duty concept. Why are we paying the stamp duty? What sort of value is government adding in a transaction between two people? Writing or transferring property from person one to person two, and the government just has to kind of put a stamp of approval on it. Maybe there's some sort of an administrative cost there. Maybe $1,000, $2,000, that's about it. But $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $100,000 on more expensive properties, you just pay for the government, to the government, because you just bought yourself a house. So see how they're spinning it into saving you money on something that you shouldn't have been paying in the first place anyway.
It's all part of the Victorian Government's housing affordability package. From July 1, first home buyers purchasing a property under $600,000 won't pay a cent in stamp duty, and there'll be a sliding scale of concessions for properties up to $750,000.
As you can imagine, a lot of them are waiting around for the day to click over before they purchase their property.
There's a similar scheme being introduced in New South Wales too, where homes up to $650,000 will be exempt from stamp duty, with concessions on homes up to $800,000. It'll mean savings of around $25,000. First home buyers make up around 13% of the market.
It is likely that they've not been in the market. We have noticed that there's been a little bit less, fewer buyers in the marketplace in the lead up to 30 June.
The booming prices have largely been driven by investors, but at the same time as the stamp duty cuts, investors will start paying more, and that, coupled with bank restrictions in lending and across-the-board increases in interest-only loans, means investors are slowly leaving the market. That's likely to increase in July, leading Louis Christopher to call this period a window of opportunity for first-home buyers.
We're very
Talking about putting a positive spin on our story, I mean, window of opportunity for the first home buyers because there's no stamp duty, fair enough, and because the stamp duty on foreign investors is doubling, and the stamp duty on investor loans and property purchases is also still there. What sort of a window of opportunity is that? Whatever that cut in the stamp duty is for the properties up to 650,000 means that the houses and the units that cost now under 650,000, which there aren't many of, will just probably jump up by that amount. I mean, it's clear as day.
confident we are going to be seeing less investors in the marketplace. Does mean that there is a window there for first-home buyers to potentially enter into the market and not have the situation where we have had in the past, a la, for example, the First Home Owners Grant Scheme, which did boost prices.
It's not all about the inner city. Agents in regional areas have told the ABC they're seeing a glut of properties on the market.
They are regional townships, so I'm not expecting prices to suddenly boom in those areas.
A glut of properties in the market. Lovely.
Once we click over July 1. But nevertheless, that there will be an advantage there for first-home buyers for those regional townships, given the surplus of stock.
So that whole project is all the Lend-Lease area?
But agent Andrew Wood thinks it could be sellers who end up benefiting from the changes in stamp duty.
I think he's onto something there. I think he's not wrong. It's the seller's grant. It's not the buyer's help.
It could either be the sellers taking advantage of it, or it could be just buyers going along to an auction, knowing that they have 500 plus stamp duty to pay, so now they can pay it all in the purchase price, so they can bid, make a few more bids.
Louis Christopher says all eyes should be on the next month's clearance rates.
It is also possible we may well see a turning point in the market in Sydney and Melbourne. If we see clearance rates consistently fall below 65% at Sydney and say 70% for Melbourne, it might herald a new slowdown, a significant slowdown in the market.
Slowdown in the market. This is my prediction. That slowdown in the market is going to tell people that there's just no confidence in it, that they should sit tight and see what happens, because everyone's been talking about this property bubble bursting and housing going down. So once the confidence is lost, you'll find that everybody's sitting on the sidelines. Even the people who can afford these overly expensive housing projects, they will be sitting on the sidelines. And the more people sit on the sidelines, the more properties there are on the market. There's a glut, and then there's a downward pressure on the prices.
Casby certainly hopes so.
It's been a big, steep learning curve, and it's a big step in our lives, so I hope that we can find something and hopefully we can save a bit of money.